Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for anything and everything to do with you, the SME owner, the MSME owner, the startup, the student who's aspiring to become an entrepreneur, or just about every Indian who aspires to look at their money differently. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. Every Tuesday, we bring you an expert voice talking to you about how and why you should be looking at saving your money and what you should be doing, what asset classes perhaps. All of those questions I pose to the experts who join us. Let me introduce who is joining us this Tuesday. Harshvardhan Roongta, he is CFP at Roongta Securities. Harshvardhan, good reconnecting with you. It's been a long time. Uh, and while perhaps not much has changed when it comes to, how closely you track the markets and how closely you really advise your clients and people, what has changed, of course, is the world as we speak. Everything that we considered normal, all the cornerstones have moved. For someone who is looking at the start of fiscal 22, saying, I want to quickly move and put my plans in place when it comes to FY 22, even in the middle of this entire uncertainty, what's your advice for them?
Yes, you're right when you say this that nothing otherwise has changed in the investment universe. It's just the circumstances that keep changing regularly. Now, what is important is that as an investor, as somebody who gets affected with the external environment, how do you insulate yourself? How do you make sure that you are still on track? I think that is the biggest challenge any individual will be facing at this juncture in time. So, what you asked specifically is that how do you approach 2022? We're almost half of calendar year 21, and of course, we are in absolute chaos at this juncture, right in the middle of
Yeah.
a second wave. I'm sure people have lost their rational thinking ability. So, I think it's a good question at this hour. What I would simply say is that just take one step back. I know it's not easy to be done. It's easy said than actually done. But you need to just take one step back, just get everybody together in your family, to sit and understand things that are happening. List down, jot down all your finances. I mean, what's your source of income? What are your expenses? What are your assets? What are your liabilities? So the first step would be to at least get those things jotted down in black and white, because many a times your family members are not aware of what's happening. Once you've done that, as I said, nothing fundamentally changes about investments. So what you need to
Okay.
understand and keep in mind, if you have goals for children's education which are 5, 10, or 15 years away from now, they're still going to happen. They're still 5, 10, 15 years away. What happens in 2021, or this COVID goes away by 22 or whatever, it's not
Yeah,
going to be relevant 5 or 10 years later. So
sure.
those goals haven't changed. So just stick to, you first draw down your goals. You fix out as to what your requirements are going to be in long term, and stick to that asset allocation. So your approach in 2022 is going to be such that you don't get influenced by some kind of chaos that is happening currently, and change path. Your
Sure.
asset allocation should remain same. Your the products that you're investing into should not be influenced by what is happening in the market currently, or what a particular product is giving in terms of returns over the past 2 or 3 years. So equity surprisingly has been given very good returns despite what
Sure.
we are seeing in the economy. So do
Sure.
not get over influenced by what markets are doing, and allocate more towards equity. I don't think that should be the approach.
Probably an unfair question to ask you because, again, there's so much uncertain right now. But since we're a show that speaks with entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are facing an uncertain market, a lot of them have been facing, losses. A lot of them have been forced to perhaps, unfortunately, fold up their businesses, factoring losses, probably close down just some units, etc. If you're looking at that and you're saying, I don't have money to even survive probably the next 2, 3 months, I don't have money to even pay my employees for the next 2, 3 months. What should your strategy be? Everyone says have 6 months of liquid cash for to cover expenses. If you unfortunately haven't done that, what should you perhaps be doing in this scenario?
This is most certainly a very practical problem people are facing right now.
Yeah.
So there's no denial that at this juncture to talk about goals that you have 5 or 10 years away from now seems completely unreasonable, because you're fighting to survive right now,
Absolutely.
and then you're talking about things that are going to happen 10 years later. It is not making sense at all. Now, if you're in such a situation wherein, of course, your businesses are being affected because of the lockdown or the break the chain or any other word that is being used, and you're not able to generate cash flows, so most certainly you'll have to curtail your expenses. I mean, again, it's easier said than done. Those living in those circumstances know that situation better.
Sure.
So, ideally speaking, the planning should have included these kind of situations. I mean, you need to be very careful about a situation that this could happen. If it's happened in 2020 and 21,
Sure.
why would it not happen in 23 again or 24? So at least take some learnings out of this. If you ask me what is a concrete solution, of course, you will have to approach your finances. If you're an SME where banks are financing you, you will have to go back to them and tell them that you need certain more credit facilities. RBI has been advocating that and extending some or the other form of liquidity to be extended further to business houses. So I
Yeah.
think you will have to go and tap into that. I don't think it's a very wise decision to go at this junction, ask around your relatives and friends, because I'm sure even they could be facing a similar problem at this junction. It is a difficult time. You will have to possibly let go of certain people to cut down your expenses. You'll have to negotiate with your suppliers, and you'll have to take fresh terms with them. I think it's only the reputation at this juncture, how you've been conducting yourself till today. I think that is
Yeah.
only going to help you to sail through this particular period.
So, you started this interview by saying look at the 5 to 10 years. So, if you're looking at the mid to short term when it comes to your finances, what are some of the guidelines, the frameworks that you would recommend for entrepreneurs for their personal finances, not looking at, the money that's going into the business? Any sort of thumb rules that you want them to keep in mind? You were also talking about, the focus on equity. What is the debt equity ratio if you're an entrepreneur who's been in the business for some time? Or someone who's just starting out? Is there something you can share with us?
Yes, of course. In fact, when you look at personal finance planning, so that is all your requirements, non-business requirements. So if you
Yeah.
have business, of course, you will have your cash flows planned, etc. over there. One essential point that everybody needs to keep in mind, that there has to be some capital which is not going to be used for your business purposes. So, every entrepreneur for that matter, when he starts off, puts in some capital on his own. And okay, then the business either funds itself or you borrow from lenders. What you need to keep in mind is that before you start up, or when you're just going to pump in more money into your business, your own capital, make sure that you treat your house as a separate business unit, which requires capital also. What people tend to forget at this juncture is that I'm starting a new business, so let me put everything in this business.
Yeah.
So what happens to your house? I mean, and especially times like these. So you have to consider this, your entire household setup, to be one business by itself, which requires certain capital.
Hmm.
Now that capital you cannot remove and put it into your business. So you will have to start working on this to say that my household requirements, my social and personal obligations are going to require X amount of capital. I'm going to
Sure.
build that up. Like
Sure.
how you're building capital for your business, you need to build capital for your house. Now,
Sure.
what approach should you have more particularly in the next, short term, say 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years period? One, please make sure that you have emergency fund. If you're in business, you need to have an emergency fund which is more than what a salary would have in an organized sector.
Yeah.
So you would need to possibly have 1 or 2 years worth of emergency funds against against an employee who's working in an organized sector. So we say 3 to 6 months is good enough. But for a business house, I mean, cash flows can be as erratic even in regular times. So we're not talking about crisis during COVID and kind of situation. So just to make sure that you have 6 months emergency fund could be too much on the borderline. So for business people, especially the small, people who are starting up, entrepreneurs, small enterprises, make sure you have 1 or 2 years worth of your expenses in emergency funds. I think
Sure.
that is the prime objective. The second thing to keep in mind is to have adequate insurances on yourself. So it could be life insurance in the form of a term plan, no, not investment related, of course. So it
Yeah.
has to be pure protection plans and health insurance. I mean, you need to
Sure.
make sure, because these could be big disruptors in your capital, and they just suck out everything if you don't have a proper insurance in place.
Harshvardhan, let me take a very short break. We're back in just a moment, though, after this commercial break. Welcome back. You're with us here in Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, I'm in conversation with Harshvardhan Roongta for a personal finance special. I want to ask you, you were talking about asset allocation. What is a healthy allocation of your money across different assets? What should it typically look like?
So, Sunanda, absolutely, asset allocation is a very subjective topic. As much as we try to, make it a format to say that 40% in debt and 60 in equity or vice versa, it's actually supposed to be very customized. You need to really understand what your requirement is. I could have two people of a similar age group. Suppose I have two people of 30 years of age. One is a salaried employed and one is a business owner. They will have different asset allocations, though their goals may be similar, or they could have different goals for that matter.
Sure.
So what I suggest is diversification. Let me, just put this into one word to say that you need to have diversification. And what it means is that you need to split your assets into different classes. So some amount of money will be in equity, some will be in debt. I'll explain the relevance of this because I come across many people who say that they're risk averse, they don't understand markets, so their money has to be only in deposits. I have other kind of people who say deposits don't yield enough return, so I need to be taking risks. So you have both ends of people.
Yeah.
What you need to understand, a fixed deposit offers you capital safety, but it does not beat inflation. So your money will not grow in literal sense. You will not. The purchasing power of money is not going to go up. On the other hand, you will have equities which have the potential to generate higher returns beating inflation.
Yeah.
But there is market volatility which threatens the capital safety part of the, and you need both. You need to safeguard your capital as well as grow it. Yeah. So you have to put your money to different assets. So do not get stuck with a mentality saying that either I'm all out in equity or all out in debt. You need to have a good, healthy combination. How much is that combination will depend specific to your requirements.
For someone who's starting out at looking at their finances, because we also speak with students who aspire to become entrepreneurs in the next 2 to 3 years, what's your advice about some of the basics that they need to learn for themselves before they're able to before they start earning, making the money, and then saving? Is there anything that they need to be educating themselves about that you want to tell them?
Familiar with money, I think that is the biggest lesson that a student could take at his or her age.
Yeah.
In a college level or in post-graduation, at that time, you're not really expecting people to understand everything very well. And that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong in it. It's just getting familiar with money, it's getting friends with money, just understand what money does, how you are able to save. You may not be a finance, a genius in financial matters because you may have interest in IT, you may be a software engineer, etc. And your expertise will be somewhere else. But just understand the basic nuances of money. You save money today, money saves you tomorrow. I mean, it's a simple point.
Yeah.
You need to understand what different assets are. Just understand what does an equity do? How does the market broadly function? You may understand that I need to put money in both ends. I need to have emergency funds. Even if I'm doing business, it's going to be capital intensive. I'm going to require to pump in money initially. So I'm going to keep. So as I said, your house is a business by itself. If your commercial activities require capital and you're doing every bit to source that capital, your household expenses also require capital, and you must do equal amount of importance to that and make sure there is one set of capital kept aside for your household expense. Then you can concentrate on business. I think this segregation will help them, work peacefully without the worries of household, living expenses.
Do you have any sort of sector preferences that you can give us? Or any industries, anything that you particularly like as an asset?
So yes, if you look at if sectors, we're looking at specifically saying that what looks good. I mean, of course, in the current situation, we know pharma is one that all eyes are on pharma right now because they are going to be the lifesavers for us, and no choice. Whatever they offer, we'll have to take at this juncture. So pharma, of course. IT, you and me earlier would meet and in a studio and talk. Right now, we are online using IT systems, and most of us have been working from home using some of the other IT platform, payments, purchases, everything's happening online. So, of course, IT is one sector, pharma is another. And these are more of situations that we are in currently and look good in potential in the near term as well.
Sure.
One sector which I like and I myself invested in is the FMCG sector. I mean, this is one I consider myself as a fixed deposit of equity schemes. I mean, in an equity sector, in equities, if there's something that is safe and conservative, I think it's FMCG. And it's a good sector with given healthy returns with good dividend yields. So I think this is one sector which, and looking at our population, domestic consumption, I'm a 130 crore population, you produce anything gets consumed. I mean, there are so many consumers to everything that you produce. So I think this is one which I think, and from investment perspective, you invest in sectors or specific companies in particular sector if you are very you're comfortable with that sector, you understand the nuances of that, when to enter, when to exit, those you'll have to time those. If you
Sure.
don't understand that, then of course there are mutual funds that help you do that for you.
My last two questions, and first, I do want to, come back to really talking about COVID at a time when you perhaps, people are losing family members to this terrible, terrible disease. There's a lot of information floating around about need to know, the financial information that your family members need to know. Through this interview, if you could talk to your entrepreneurs about what are the essential things that you should put in place in the case of an unfortunate, mishap, etc. Those 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, number of things that you need to perhaps put in place so that your family members are able to access any investments, any financial information that you may have. What would you want to tell us?
In fact, Sunanda, you picked up a very important topic because I know of people whose family members do not even know that they had insurance or they have insurance, and they passed away. Yeah. What's the point of buying that policy if your loved ones are not even aware of it? So first and foremost, just make a list. It could be just on an Excel sheet or a piece of paper for that matter. You don't need to really take out a time slot and appointment with yourself to do this. Just sit out at any point in time, get the other family members involved and tell and inform them that these are the investments that you've made. These are your insurance policies. Yeah. In case I am not there, God forbid, you're hospitalized, even cashless claims need to be processed, right? So medical insurance policies need to be known. So make a list of all your investments, insurances, and just make sure that you hand it over to all the people in your family. So they're aware that this is available. You need to inform the contact persons. If there's an insurance, there could be an advisor, there could be companies. You need to give them that information that if anything happens to me, please get in touch with so-and-so organization or so-and-so people. They will help you going further from this. Sure. If you have, so everything is now linked to OTPs and something, the links coming into your registered email ID. If you don't want to share your personal email ID, create an email ID which is just saying like your family name, for example. So I would say investments at whatever. And all my investment related information comes into that email ID, which is a common password with all my family members. So they all access that. So I use one email ID only for my investments for that matter. So all investments related information is in a common family email ID. It may not be my personal email ID because if I'm not there, how does my family access my personal email?
What would you like to tell our viewers about your background?
So, I come from a stockbroking background. So I've been into my parents, my forefathers, my grandfather, we've been into stockbroking. So in fact, my office is also in the BSc building in Mumbai. So I've grown up in the lanes, in the staircase, in the stairways of this building itself. My acquaintance with equities, of course, started much earlier. When I was in college, I used to visit office, sit down with people around. So, of course, being comfortable there, then of course we got into talking. I mean, the business that we do, we meet people, help them with their finances, put things in place. So I think just about that, and doing that ever since I've got into work. It's been about 20 years that I've been doing this now, and this is all that I know at this juncture.
All right, Harshvardhan, this is the first of many conversations we're going to be doing with you here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, really advising people about how and why they should be handling their finances with great care. Thank you so much for your time here on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
For those of you watching at home, if you have any questions for Harshvardhan, any questions for us, or any of the other experts who join us every Tuesday here on the show, here's how you get in touch. Our contact details coming up on your screens as we speak. Thank you so much for watching. Stay home, stay safe.